Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Nedarim Daf Ches, Nedarim 8. So we're going to start the last three words on Zayin Mabez. Amar Rav Gidal, Amar Rav Minayin. How do we know? Shenishbayin L'Kayim as a mitzvah. How do we know that you're allowed to take an oath to fulfill a mitzvah? For example, like you're going to take an oath that I'm going to eat matzah on the night of Pesach, or that I'm going to sit in a sukkah, or that I'm shake a lulav. How do you know that you could do such a thing? As it states, Nishpati v'kaimo l'shmor mishpatei tzikecha. David HaMelech says, I swore and I fulfilled to guard the words of your commandment, mishpatei tzikecha. So therefore, that's the source for this idea that Rav Gidal says in the name of Rav, that you can take an oath to fulfill a mitzvah. Where it says, but how could that possibly be? How could it possibly be that you take an oath to fulfill a mitzvah? You're mushba v'omed mehar Sinai. You already took the oath at Mount Sinai. And so therefore, how did you already take the oath at Mount Sinai? So the Mefarish on Nedarim explains, Vishinantim. Oh, that's on the next Rashi. That's on the next piece. Anyway, how can you be commanded? You're already commanded at Sinai. The source for this idea that they were commanded at Sinai is from the Midrash Rabbah, which says, "Minayin shebesinai lachu shvuas ha'ala." How do we know that they took an oath at Sinai? Because it says, "Elu divrei abris, novrat abris asher karas itam b'chorev." So therefore, this teaches us that they took an oath at Sinai, and so just like, and there was an oath, and what is the covenant at? What is the brit echorev? So, and not only were and Shvuas Taflam Testament off, it states not only were those who stood at Sinai taking the oath, but also all future generations. So we see from here that everybody took the oath at Mount Sinai, and so therefore, since we already took the oath at Mount Sinai, then you can take an oath again, meaning to say you already had an oath. So therefore, why does he say that you can be taken oath to fulfill a mitzvah? It's we already took this oath at Mount Sinai, so the second oath shouldn't be applicable. So therefore, what does it mean? So the Gemara explains, like a mashmalan, the sharle la'inish l'zeruzei nafshi. So no, it's teaching us that the oath is, you're taking the oath not to say that you're binding. You'd have to, that not to say, there's a few different ways to understand it, but this is how the Farish explains it. A person is allowed to take an oath just to be mezariz himself. So to encourage himself to fulfill the mitzvah as a result of this. Meaning to say, even somebody who's careful not to take an oath in general, this is an appropriate oath to take. So the Ran has the opinion that if you take an oath to fulfill a mitzvah, it will be applicable that if you don't keep that oath, you're going to get lashes. Meaning to say that if you take this oath and you don't fulfill it, you're going to be in violation of Baal Yachel. Meaning to say that even though you already had the oath from Sinai, it's good, appropriate to take another oath. And if you don't take this other, and if you don't fulfill the mitzvah, you're going to get lashes. So, but there are other Rishonim who say no, that this, if you take this oath to fulfill a mitzvah, which you've already been sworn to, then that oath doesn't take effect at all. And so therefore, how are you being mezariz yourself through this shvua? So it doesn't apply. So so what's the process here? So the Ramban says the following. This is what the Ramban writes in Mochamas Hashem to Shvuos. Zariz v'niskar have. That's the Rambam's lashon. It implies that the ziruz is through the fact that he mentions the name of God through his actions, and so because he's mentioning the name of God, he's going to rush to perform the mitzvah. The Tosfos Ritz says that even though the oath won't take effect at all now, nevertheless there's a ziruz here because he's going to say, well, if I don't fulfill the mitzvah, I've violated God's name in vain. So it's an unclear Gemara, like a lot of Nedarim, not completely clear, but this the different approaches to it. It says the Gemara of Amar Rav Gidal Amar Rav HaOmer Ashkim the Eshna Perak Zeh. I'm going to wake up early and I'm going to study this chapter, maybe Kol Kinuye, or Eshna Masechta Zu. We're going to learn this Masechta. Neder Gadol Nadar Le'Elokei Yisrael. He's made a great oath to God. It's a beautiful thing what he's done. Gemara asked the question, why is this an oath? He's already sworn to it. And the oath shouldn't take effect. Where did you take an oath already? Here, I was quoting the Mefarish before, because it says Vishinantam. You have to learn that Tzarech Adam was Shanos B'Torah. So, as a person is obligated to study Torah, so therefore, what's the concept here that it's a good oath? So, my Kamash, what do you want to? What's Rav Gidal saying in the name of Rav? Is he saying the same thing that he said before? That feels Ziruze Ba'alma, that he wants to just encourage himself. Well, Hainu de Rav Gidal Kamaiso. Well, he already said that statement. So, what would be the point here? No, Hakamash Mulan. So, what's he teaching us this time? Kivan di Bai Pater Navshe Bekriya Shema Shachar Svarvis. He might have thought that since if he wanted to, he could fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah just by reciting the Shema morning and the evening. So therefore, for this reason, the oath will take effect. Means to say, since he could have just fulfilled the mitzvah with a small amount, by doing a much larger amount, the oath takes effect. So Rashi says, excuse me, Rashi, the Mefarish says, the Kivim the Kara Kriya Shema, Kiyem will Yamush Sefer Torah Zemi Picha. Once he recites the Shema, he's fulfilled the mitzvah. The Amar B'Shimon Ben Yochai B'Mesachos Menachos, Kol HaKora Kriya Shema Shachris Ba'arves, whoever recites the Shema morning and evening, Harei Kiyem Mitzvahs Lo Yamush. And so therefore, Kivim the Bai Pater Nav Shem V'Shinantam B'Kriya Shema. Since he went to fulfill his mitzvah by reciting the Shema, to fulfill his obligation from the Sinai. So therefore, when he says, Ki Amar Esh, the Parak said, because since he wasn't sworn to read the Torah early in the morning, he was sworn to just say Shema. And so therefore, this mitzvah will take effect. The Ran says, Mistaberli Delav Davka Devahachi Miftar. It's not specific when it says that you really fulfilled the mitzvah with just reciting the Shema. Because really a person has to learn day and night according to all his energy. So and Ramin Parakama the Kedushin you need to be completely fluent with it. So it means lav davka. So that's what the Ran says, because a person has to learn day and night, really, according to his strength. Amar Rav Gidal Amar Rav HaOmer Chavero Nashkim V'Nishta Perak says, somebody says to his friend, let's get up early and study this chapter. It's his idea. Allah Ashkim, he has to be the one to get up first. He has to be the one to get up first, if that's what he says. Shenemar Vayomer, as it states in the verse, Vayomer Elai Kum say El Abika. God said to Ezekiel, get up and go to the valley. V'shama daber otach, and there I will speak with you. V'nei, and when and it says Vaytzei Abika, Ezekiel goes out to the valley. V'nei sham kvod Hashem omeid. He found God already standing there. We see from here that if it's your idea to get up and study early, you have to be the first one to do that. The person who has the idea to do the mitzvah has to go first. So then the Gemara says another statement, but this is a little different. Amar of Yosef, Nido b'cholam. Let's say a person has a dream, and in this dream he sees that he was excommunicated. He needs to bring 10 people to release him from the dream. And it has to be that those 10 people know how to derive at the halacha, meaning to say that they know how to teach other people. But if they know how to learn Mishnayos, but they don't know how to derive the halacha, they just know how to learn it literally, low, then it's not sufficient. So if you can't find 10 people at this level, then he can even bring the people who are masnu v'lo, then that's sufficient. That's sufficient if you can't find the other people. But let's say he can't even find them. What should he do? He should go stand at the intersection. And he should give Shalom Aleichem to 10 people who are walking by. And the Ran explains, and when they respond to him, Yaginu alav min ha'yisurim, they're going to protect him from afflictions until he can find 10 men together. The Mefarish says it differently. When they respond to him, Shalom, they're removing him from his cherem, because somebody who's in Nidoi is not able to be greeted. So by them greeting him, they're removing it from the cherem. So it says, until he finds 10 who can gather together to remove him, because these 10 people are no the halacha. Let's say, says Ravina to Rav Ashi, let's say he knows who excommunicated him. Is he going to be permitted, that person who he knows excommunicated him, is he permitted to go to him to release him from his excommunication? Because we have a concept in general, says the Ran, whoever excommunicates, he can be the one to remove the person. As we say in Moikatan, go to this person, they'll release you. Gemara explains, it's not effective. Why? Maybe God just only made him a shliach to excommunicate you, but not to release you from the excommunication. Let's say you were excommunicated in the dream, but in the dream you were also released from the excommunication. What will be the law? Do we say kashem? So the Gemara explains. He responds. Rav Ashi said, response Rav Acha kashem sheyev shal barbo, and just like you can't have wheat without some straw, kach yev shar, so too it's impossible to have l'chalom b'lo dvar b'tam. You can't have a dream without some words which are nonsense, and so therefore, if indeed you had this dream and you were excommunicating the dream and then you were released in the dream, it's not necessarily proof that you were really released. So therefore you remain in your excommunication. What does that mean? So the Ran says, we need to really investigate whether you need whether you need to really act in all manners like you're really excommunicated. So, and the Ran writes, Mistaberly, it seems to me, even though we said here explicitly that somebody who was excommunicated in his dream needs to be released, we really can't learn from here that a person who takes a vow in a dream also needs it to be revoked. Because the reason here is because maybe he was excommunicated from heaven, but you can't say that about a vow. So, but he says, I saw the Rashba in a tshuva. He writes that there was an incident of a person who took a vow in a dream, and it came to the Rashba, and the Rashba said, you need to release yourself from that. You need to do a Torah Nedarim. Ravina Avalei Nidra with the Beisaho. Ravina, his wife, had a vow that she took, and he was unable to release her from the vow. Why was he unable to release her? Either because it wasn't the same day, or because it wasn't a vow that was between him and her, and so therefore he wasn't able to release it, or else because it was a vow. Yeah, so it wasn't or it wasn't a vow from Inoy Nefesh. So it wasn't a vow where she was being afflicted. It wasn't a vow that was between him and her, or it wasn't the same day. So he didn't have the ability to release her from the vow. So he came to the court. So he comes to Rav Ashi. He said, my wife asked me to come to the court so that she could be released from the vow. Amarle, so Rav Ashi says back to Ravina, imechanfin in ilolo. He says, if you have a bezdin of 3 that's already together, fine. Then the husband can bring before them the charata of his wife, and she can be released from the vow. That's what Rav Ashi said to Ravina. Meaning, so you can be an agent for your wife if there's already a court of 3 there. And we learn from here, Shema Mina to us. We learn from here 3 things. What are 3 things? Shema Mina, we learn from here, Baal Nasa Shliach L'charatas Ishto. We see that a husband can become a shliach, an agent for the charata of his wife, meaning to say that a woman can appoint her husband to go and be matir the Nedarim. So technically speaking, even though it's not really the minhag, a woman can go to her husband on Erev Rosh Hashanah and say, can you do a Torah Nedarim not just for yourself, but also for me? And the husband could express that to the Bezdin, and his wife's vows could be annulled. That's the first thing. And we see that you're not allowed to release a vow in the place where your Rebbe is there, because therefore and that's why Ravina came to Rav Ashi. Because if that was the case, Ravina himself would have released his wife from his vow. And if you want to ask, says the Ran, I don't understand the question. How could Ravina release his wife from the vow? Person's not allowed to view his own afflictions. Rameir Omer, and Rameir says, Aflo nige krovav. Nevertheless, a person's allowed to release all of his vows, except any vow except for his own vow. So according to this, Ron, if you're sitting on Erev Rosh Hashanah, you're the bezdin for a Torah Nedarim, and your brother, your father, your son come over to you, and they want to be part of the bezdin where you're being matir the neder. You can, even though normally speaking, a dayan can't judge his own relative. In this case, he can. According to this. Rabbi Yehuda says in the Ran, Afo nidre ishto shabeino ben acherim. So, okay. Anyway, so that's why Ravina would have been able to annul the vow, were not for the fact that Rav Ashi was his Rebbe. But the fact is, we know from elsewhere that Rav Ashi is not his Rebbe. That Ravina was older than Rav Ashi, because it says Ravina and Rav Ashi. So therefore, we have to say that this is maybe a different Ravina and Rav Ashi. That's a little difficult, but that's what we have to say. And then we come to, what is the third thing we learn? And also we learn that the only time you can annul the wife's vows as an agent is only if he found them already gathered together and he was able to bring them his wife's regret. So Rav Avram Ben Ahar, which is from Montpellier, which I had the ability to go to this summer. So Rav Avram Ben Ahar explains that what we're talking about is that the wife of Ravina was embarrassed to come to have her vow revoked in front of Rav Ashi or in front of 3 Edyotos. And therefore Ravina requested from Rav Ashi that he should be mochel al his kavod. He should waive his honor, and Ravina should bring to her 3 adyotos to annul the vow. And Ravina will explain why the vow should be annulled. He'll express her regret. Rav Ashi responded, yes, I waive my honor, and you can bring her 3 adyotos. But you're not able, he says, I waive my honor that 3 adyotos could release her, but not that you should bring the 3 adyotos to her, because that's a zilusa, that's disrespect to the court, that she doesn't want to go to them and they have to go to her. But if you find in your home, it just so happens to be, find 3 people already there, well, then you could do it there. So that's how Rav Abba Menahar explains this Gemara. Gemara is a little bit unclear, like a lot of Nedarim. The Shamta, and the Gemara now says, the Shamta ben excommunication, afilu ba'asra de Rabbi. Even in a place where your Rebbe is, you can remove somebody from excommunication without asking the Rebbe, even in a place where your Rebbe is. So the Gemara now says another law with respect to nidoi, with excommunication. Before we go into that, there's all dispute between Rav Achai Gon. Rav Achai Gon says that our Gemara one says that you can remove somebody from excommunication in the place of your Rebbe. He says that's only if you were excommunicated in a dream. And so the Nitziv explains that actually a nidoi in a dream is actually stricter than a nidoi when you're awake, because since you're in a dream, we view it as excommunication coming from heaven. But if it would be a regular nidoi, you would not be permitted to go to the place of your Rebbe and release him. And even though the nidoi in a dream you might think is more lenient, nevertheless, the punishment of the nidoi is more strict. Because, so there's some of the halachos that Emek HaSheila that the Nitziv is saying. The Yachad Mumcha Shari Shamta. A chacham by himself, an individual, he is permitted to do the nidoi by himself, to remove him, and he doesn't need 2 other people to join together with him. So now the Gemara says, let's talk about the person who mentions God's name in vain. And let's clarify the reward for people who are careful about this. Amar Rav Shimon bar Zved, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Tava, Amar Pia Aricha Debei Rebbe Acha, Amar Rebbe Zera, Amar Rebbe Elazar, Amar Rebbe Chanina, Amar Rebbe Miyasha, Mishmei de Rebbe Yehuda bar Eloi, Maidach Siv. What do we do from the verse from Malachi, chapter 3, verse 20? V'zarcha lachem yirei shemi, that it will shine forth those who are V'zarcha lachem yirei shemi, Shemesh tzedakah. This is the verse from Malachi. So the sun will shine forth for those who fear my name. The sun will be righteous and will heal those around it, and it will come forth linen and fatty calves. So what does this mean? Says the Gemara, this refers to those people who are fearful not to mention God's name in vain. So they get a lot of reward for not mentioning God's name in vain. And what's going to happen to them? Shemesh tzedakah umarape. The sun will treat them with charity and will heal them. Amar Baya Shma Mina. Baya says we learn from here, Chirga de Yoma Maseh, that the dust that comes out from the rays of the sun, when it comes into the house, Maseh, this heals the sick people. The Levushe Mordechai says it's not referring to actually sick people, it refers to Torah scholars who are considered to be weak from studying the Torah. And Rabbi Yehuda bar Elai, who says that this verse refers to the reward that you get in this world for not using God's name in vain, this is actually in disagreement with Rish Lakish. The Amar, Rish Lakish says, "Ein Gehenna Olam Haba." Rish Lakish says there's no hell in the world to come. Nothing's going to come after the resurrection of the dead. No Gehenna. The only thing that's going to happen is God will take out the sun from its shield. Tzaddikim misrapim, both the tzaddikim will be healed by it. The Rishonim nidonim ba, and the wicked people will be judged by it. Shenemar v'zarchalachem yirei shemi shamesh, and it will shine forth for you those who fear my name, the sun. V'lo, not only that, el shemis'adnin ba, they will delight in it, as it says, v'tzasem upishtem kegli marbek. It says they will go forth with fatty linen, like calves, like fatty calves. Like you will be fatty like the calves who are fattened in the corral. And the wicked people will be judged with it. As it says, so the same, the Gehenna and the Olam Haba will be the same thing. It will be the sun shining forth. The righteous people will be blessed by it. They'll become fat. And the wicked people will be like a fire burning them. And so therefore, we see from here that Gehenna and Gan Eden are the same thing. It's just your perspective. It's a very powerful, powerful point. Okay, we'll stop here, the recording. And if anybody has any questions, happy to